And our special guest tonight, Jonathan Gray, his latest work, The Weapon the Globalists Fear. We'll find out a little bit later on what that weapon just might be. Jonathan, what can you tell us about the Sumerian culture?
The Sumerian culture is reputedly the earliest of all the cultures, but the evidence now shows that the Sumerians, the Chinese, the Mexicans, the Egyptians all started roughly around the same time from a common beginning. When Alexander the Great defeated the Persians in 331 BC, he journeyed to Babylon, which was a center of the Sumerian, the location of the Sumerian culture. And he and his scholars there studied very, very carefully the astronomical observations of these people, and they placed the founding of Sumeria at 2234 BC. Rather interesting.
It is. Ominous date, isn't it?
Yes, uncannily close to what we've been speaking of.
What did you think of the work of the late Zecharia Sitchin, where he claims visitors from another planet came here, to mine gold, genetically altered mankind, and that it was based on his interpretation of the Sumerian texts that they're there?
Very interesting question, yes. Very important one, actually. I approached Zecharia Sitchin on this because I quoted him in some of my books for a while. Mm-hmm. In fact, in Dead Men's Secrets, I think I quote him 2 or 3 times. And my sympathies were with him simply because he, like myself, had come across the conclusion that our ancestors were not dumb. They started off pretty in the Sumerian times, they started off pretty sophisticated.
Right.
On that score, I thought, well, here's a man after my own heart. But as people began to contact me further, they said, but what about this? What about this? And it began to disturb me. So I contacted Zecharia in March this last year while he was still alive. And I specifically asked him, can you please tell me where I can find the Sumerian documents that you speak of? And I spelled out the Anunnaki, I spelled out Nibiru, the whole story of this mining on Earth and so on. I said, where are the Sumerian documents that tell us this? Because I'm going to have to answer people that put their trust in what I've written about you. He wrote back and was not able to tell me. He says, it's in my books. Well, of course, I'd read all his books, and I knew there was no evidence in his books. It was just the story. So I went on a search and discovered that we now have translated into English all of the Sumerian documents that have ever been unearthed. And there are 2 universities in America that now have made those available. And I specifically zeroed in on those particular subjects and found that they're not even in the Sumerian documents. Nibiru was mentioned, but as a human being that was deified after his hero life, and that was all it was. The Anunnaki were human beings who were very elite in their community, but they were not outer space gods.
But advanced, nonetheless.
And Nibiru was the name given to heroes when they died. Sometimes Nibiru and other names were given, but Nibiru became the name given to the planet Jupiter, which is always visible, because this particular hero in Sumerian history did acts which made them honor him, and they said, all right, when we look up at Jupiter in the sky, we'll always remember him. That's the closest Nibiru ever got to being a planet, was a deified human identified with a planet after his death.
Why does there seem to be resistance by mainstream science to some of these theories? I mean, big deal if we are hundreds of millions of years old. That would be exciting. Why do they fight this?
The geological column, George, destroys the theory of evolution. That's as simple as that, really. Let's look at it this way. We started out with the challenge by our friend Mr. Dawkins and his protege, Mr. Don.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I happened to come across a dear man over there in the United States, a real true-blooded American. His name was Ed Conrad. And Ed actually, over there in near his hometown, began digging around, and there in the open coal fields, between coal strata, he came across a human skull, a human finger, and I think it was about 2 or 3 dozen various human remains. Now, he went to the Smithsonian with this, and he had a real battle. In fact, it's been going on for about 20 years. His first petrified skull was found between these coal veins, and 2 teeth were found inside it. Now, the Smithsonian promised to analyze it for him, and they said that they would they'd do a proper scientific examination. And before he did this, actually, Ed had learned that bone contains very small haversian canals, and their presence is conclusive evidence of bone. Even if the bone has petrified, the canals are petrified as well, because they're just the holes in going through it. They're an integral part of the cell structure of bone. And they're the passageways for the process. Now, the Smithsonian, contrary to their promise, did not examine the cell structure, or if they did, they accidentally clamped up on what they'd found.
Right.
Now, Ed continued to pressure them, and they promised to examine further. Well, he kept coming back, and they just ignored him. And he pressed them, and all he got was weak excuses. And so he began to worry and say, hey, what's going on here? So had they discovered something that might blow their evolution theory sky high? Well, he continued to find more and more objects. And he took one of them, a photo of one of them actually, was forwarded to Wilton Krogman, an internationally acclaimed bone expert, and he's actually one of the world's foremost human comparative anatomists.
Was he excited about this?
Oh, he was. He said, this is a premolar tooth. And he said, man, you've got something that's going to go down in the book on human paleontology. An unbeatable combination, hominoid teeth and mammalian bone.
Did it ever go down in history?
Well, Krogman recommended that an infrared scan be done, and it was sent to the American Medical Laboratories in Fairfax, Virginia, and they confirmed what he suspected. Now, Ed sent a copy of the scan to a man called Rye at the Smithsonian, and that was ignored. He made other requests for several major universities, and they were ignored. And then he learned from a newspaper article that a medical surgeon in Pennsylvania was able to interpret the scans. And this man agreed to do so. And in his response, he said, the scan identifies your material as compatible with either tooth or bone in origin. So Ed was being confirmed by one expert, now another expert. But anyway, he continued to battle the super scientists to get his discovery examined, and for over 20 years they kept giving him the royal runaround. Just rocks, they said.
And he
Human
kept at it.
remains could never be found in coal. Shut up, Ed, case closed.
But he wouldn't stop.
No, he wouldn't stop. And, in fact, I spoke to Ed just this week, just 2 or 3 days ago, and I told him I was going to come on your program, and hopefully we might just mention this,
Sure.
George. Ed said, I'm willing to go on TV with the Smithsonian experts, and he challenges anybody on the face of this planet to sit down with him and an independent board of review and watch the videos of the testing. Well, what he's found blows the evolution theory sky high, and it destroys the succession of geological ages that we've been hearing in the schools and universities.
That's remarkable. It really is.
It's explosive stuff.
Let's move over to the Americas for a moment. Tell me about this case of a Captain Don Henry who found a 400-foot pyramid on the seabed off of Florida. Tell me about that.
Well, that was back in 1976, and Captain Henry was 40 miles off the southern coast of Florida, and he was directing sonar soundings of the floor of the ocean. And suddenly, up came this immense pyramid-shaped object. Now, this was about 300 feet below the surface of the sea, and later underwater closed-circuit TV was brought in, and it showed the pyramid to be about 420 feet high. Now, That's a pretty tall building.
That's a tall building. Yep.
And you were mentioning skyscrapers earlier, George. Well, there's one for sure.
Yep.
Nearly the size of the Great Pyramids of Egypt.
How far off of Florida was it?
About 40 miles. So anyone who wants to just go out to see, if they've got the equipment, they could go and look for it.
So it must have been on an island. I don't think, unless Florida was that long, that wide, and then something happened to that portion of it.
Well, it does appear that over the last 4,000 years, the seabed has risen about 300 to 500 feet. I'm sorry, the sea has risen over the seabed. The land has either sunk or the sea has risen. And this would have been part of the North American continent at that time, I guess.
That's something. You talked about how the Mayans had surgical instruments that were thousands of times sharper than our own modern platinum. Tell me about this.
Yes, they were. Actually, they're made of obsidian glass, which is volcanic glass, actually. And some modern surgeons have even used them because they have great faith that they see the trepanning that was done by the ancient American tribes, and they see the apparent brain surgery and heart surgery that was conducted using these instruments. And there was a case actually of a girl who was very seriously injured in a motor car accident back there in the 1960s, and one surgeon chose, above modern instruments, to use some of the old ones, and because they were sharp, they didn't cut the cells so badly, and she survived beautifully, as well as anyone in a modern hospital.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the case of the Peruvian surgeon, isn't it?
Yeah, he was a Peruvian surgeon, yes. And the Mayans, the Peruvians, the Aztecs, they all had a fair knowledge of this, and there must have been quite a bit of sharing going on, I think.
Tell me about this vast artificial tunnel in Ecuador.
Oh, that one really does end. You've got me going on that one. When I first wrote Dead Men's Secrets, I had heard about this. I mean, I've been in the Amazon, and to me that's one of the most lovely places on earth, apart from the bugs and all that, and wild people. But it's beautiful, unspoiled, it's forgotten. And there, as in many continents, in fact, all continents, there are vast underground tunnel systems that just don't go for a mile or two, but they go for hundreds, maybe even thousands of miles. Now, when I first wrote about this particular one in eastern Ecuador, in the Ecuador, eastern Peru, Brazilian region, and the eastern side of the Andes Mountains, I was incensed when I had discovered that Westerners were coming into the Amazon, and they were coming in by helicopter over little pockets of clearing in the jungle where they could see a couple of houses where there was an Indian tribe, because they live in little clusters like that. And they were dropping lollies and sweets laced with arsenic and typhus. And naturally, something coming out of the sky like that, these simple people would pick it up.
Think they were, yeah.
They'd want to taste it, and they would die. And then these lovely people who gave them the gift would come in and seize their land and start opening it up for cattle or for prospecting for gold or whatever else. And this has been going on, as you very well know, and some of us are pretty upset about it. And this particular tribe got in contact. In fact, their chief went to civilization. He eventually got down to a city of Manaus on the Amazon River, and he spoke to Karl Brugger, who was a German native expert and freelance writer and investigator. And he pled for the West to stop the genocide that was taking place. And Brugger came out with a rather good book at that time, and I was familiar with his discoveries, and so I decided I'd just put a little bit about that in my book, Dead Men's Secrets. And
it's all over the planet, isn't it?
Yes.
High technology, strange stories. I mean, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And what happened, George, was that this tribe, 30,000 of them actually, a whole nipped family group of tribes, went underground. They decided this was the only safe course they could take, and they went in to live at some of the underground cities that were already existing from ancient times. Now, soon after my book came out, well, pretty soon after, a Canadian scientist contacted me. He's become a good friend now, Jerry, and he said, "Look, we were prospecting and exploring in the Amazon, and my group was ambushed by a tribe, and I was taken. They got away, but I became a prisoner, and I was led through the tunnel system to their city. And as you approach a city underground, you get to a certain level, and suddenly lights start coming on automatically. When you go past that area, the lights go off behind you."
Weird.
Ancient, very ancient.
And you know that this civilization didn't build this. It was done way before them.
This present civilization is only occupying it. That's right.
Yeah, it is.
And we can go to Europe and Africa. In fact, in South America, one of your presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, was shown the entrances to more tunnels in Chile. The British missionary, what was his name? David Livingstone, was taken into tunnels in Africa.
Along with Stanley.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, and the astronaut, the first man to walk on the moon, went with another Stanley Hall, into a tunnel system in Ecuador, and they explored underground for 2 months. And I've corresponded with Mr. Hall, and he's a very level-headed fellow, and so was Neil Armstrong, and they actually had the support, and they were accompanied by members from the University of Edinburgh and the University of Quito. So these are real. These do exist. I've had friends go to an underground tunnel system in Spain, and they've sent me photographs of what they photographed while they're underground.
Well, you know, Columbus may have discovered the New World in 1492, but there were others way before him.
Oh, most certainly. The myth of Columbus being the discoverer, he was only the rediscoverer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the modern one.
The modern, that's right.
You've talked about maps, ancient maps of the world that have, disappeared? Vanished?
Yes. There are several of these, actually, which are based upon a spherical Earth. So they knew the Earth was round, and they knew longitude and latitude, which was later forgotten and only rediscovered in the last couple of 100 years. They drew their maps on that basis. The curvature of the Earth is very obvious on the maps they draw of Antarctica and North America and South America, for example, and Asia as well. Where the curves are, it's not like you see on a flat map, it's like you see on a circular globe.
You have talked about the 2,000-ton stone building blocks in Lebanon and Balabac.
Yes.
To me, they were landing ports. I don't know.
Well, they were certainly sophisticated. They were done with machinery. I have no doubt about that. They were cut around.
And they were put in place, weren't they?
They were put in place, yes. And today they form a foundation upon which the two largest Roman temples in the whole Roman world were later built, but they dwarfed those temples.
It's truly amazing. Well, when we come back, Jonathan, I want to talk about your latest work, The Weapon of the Globalist Sphere, and find out exactly what that amazing secret is that you've discovered, and we'll talk about that. Next hour, we'll open up the phone lines and give you an opportunity to chat with Jonathan Gray. His works, of course, Dead Men's Secrets in The Weapon, the Globalist Sphere, and others. Just simply go to his website, which is linked up at coasttocoastam.com. beforeus.com. I'll be back in a moment with Jonathan Gray, and we'll talk about this amazing secret. What could it be? Well, next hour, we'll take your phone calls with the international explorer and archaeologist, Jonathan Gray. But I'll be back with him in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Jonathan, in your work, The Weapon, the Globalist Sphere, you talk about an amazing secret in the foundation rocks of our planet. Now, tell me about that. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, perhaps we could look at that first. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Right. Now, Back in 1965, one spring day, there was a young American scientist peering through his microscope at some very thin, translucent sections of granite-type rocks. And suddenly it struck him, George, this had the potential to turn an established theory, global theory, upside down. What he was looking at could raise an uproar in the scientific world, and as a result of mentioning it, he lost his funding. Now, what had he found? He had found physical, scientific evidence that can be tested under any laboratory that shows that the foundation rocks of our continents solidified not over millions of years, slowly cooling from liquid to solid, but within minutes. The molten rock became suddenly solid.
Within
How did he know
minutes?
this? Yes, in minutes, not days or years or centuries. Now, just suppose you dropped a Alka-Seltzer into a glass of water. It has a very short life, doesn't it? The beginning of effervescence.
Fizz, fizz, and it's gone.
It's gone, yes. Now, what he had found was tiny bubbles, little bubbles of polonium inside the granite rocks of our planet worldwide.
While they all solidified.
Yes, and polonium bubbles only have a half-life of 3 minutes. Otherwise, they would have dispersed before the rock solidified.
Interesting.
Now, he published this in the magazines of peer review. He battled the establishment for more than 20 years. And what he was finding was this, that the granite was in a liquid state, then it was frozen into solidified granite within a matter of minutes and left behind the halo bubbles before they disappeared.
And this is all when the planet was forming?
When the planet was forming. These were frozen into the solid granite. That's a physical fact that anyone can see and test. Now, this is not generally promoted in the scientific world because it becomes a challenge.
Yeah, tell me the significance of this discovery.
Significance of the discovery is that our planet had to have been created and solidified in a very short time, just like the book of Genesis in the Old Testament is telling us.
Like in days?
I beg your pardon?
In days?
In minutes.
That is remarkable.
It had to happen in less than 3 minutes. And that's globally on every continent of our planet. All the foundation of our rocks have these halos in them, these bubbles preserved and frozen.
So in the state that the planet might have been in, let's say it was in a gas state before this all happened, right?
Yeah.
Instantly, I guess it would be instantly, everything solidified.
Instantly, everything solidified. Now, this was actually presented to the National Academy of Sciences. Dr. Robert Gentry is the scientist's name. He published unrefuted evidence for an instant creation in Nature magazine, in Science, in Applied Physical Letters, and others. Now, the evolutionist-controlled National Academy of Sciences strongly opposed this horrifying idea, even claiming that the evidence for creation had been scientifically invalidated. And so Gentry went back and he said, wait a minute, please publicly explain where the palladium halo evidence has ever been scientifically invalidated. And it was embarrassing. They couldn't disprove him.
Are you saying that this is a backing of God?
He said, what else could it be? It was a sudden intervention in the liquid state, and it froze in 3 minutes.
Hence, the globalists don't want us to know this.
They don't want us to know this. And why don't they want us to know, George? I do believe that what we've got here is a philosophy that's taken over our planet, and it's a battle now between a document and the death squad. I mean, we all know that there's a plan put into operation now to eliminate most of the world's population. And the planners say this needs to be done so they can have their utopia world. Now we've got this coming along, which is a bombshell set to explode in their face.
They would love another calamity as long as they weren't part of it.
Oh, yes. They'll be the minority, won't they, who survived?
Yep.
Now, we might be aghast at the dangers of a nuclear bomb at the hands of terrorists or renegade governments, but even more deadly than all of this is this intellectual bomb that's been let loose upon us. It's the nihilistic mindset that's been dominating scientific thought for the last 150 years. It's based upon the theory that we are here by accident, we are all useless eaters, and that the survival of the fittest means that the use of force and cruelty to crush the weak is justified. That's the mindset that's taken over our planet.
Well, that's true. Now, how did, in the book of Genesis, did they know this? Did they know the timetable of the formation of the solar system, the planets? How did they know this?
Well, the writers of the book of Genesis state that the Creator actually conveyed the information to them, because they, of course, were not witnesses, but whoever was around at that time conveyed the information and said, this is how I did it.
What do you think?
So this means that the book of Genesis is no longer relegated to fantasy and myth. We've got here scientific corroboration of its claim.
In minutes. It said, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
And this is the document they hate. And you can understand why now the taking over of our educational establishment, of our scientific establishment, and of virtually every establishment that now controls our society has been done with a purpose in mind to control, to eliminate, and to discredit the book of Genesis. And I mean, that's the one book of all books that the establishment is against. They'll discredit it, they'll poo-hoo it, they'll say it's myth, they'll say it's nonsense or it's religious garbage, but they will not admit that it's scientific truth, because that will awaken people to say, hey, we're not useless eaters. We're not people who have no value. We are valuable people. We were created. We were given dignity. Our families are to be free. We are to be respected, and we are to respect one another. That's the message of Genesis.
That's a great story. I mean,
it's the opposite from the agenda that's now being put into action.
How come this isn't publicized other than in your work?
Well, I guess I stumbled across this, and I'm out now, George, to get the world to know this, and I hope I get a few helpers, because this is going to empower people to be courageous and to have some hope at last, after all.
Other than divine intervention, scientifically, what caused it to form so fast?
It could not form so fast given its own natural state. It would have had to taken slowly. There had to have been intervention.
There was intervention. Something.
Yeah.
Some divine power.
Yes.
Kicked this thing into high gear.
Exactly. That's the only scientific thing that makes sense about it. Because you take the laws of nature, they wouldn't let it happen.
Would you assume the other planets were formed the same way?
Well, we can only extrapolate, I suppose, from our own planet, but I suppose it would make sense that if it happened to this planet, it would happen to others.
Pretty remarkable. Let's take just the few minutes that we have, and then we'll take phone calls next hour with you, Jonathan. Back about structures on other planets and on the moon.
Yes.
They could be there.
Well, yes, they could very well be there. And they have and I believe they have a human explanation. I mean, we've been to the moon before. We've been to the moon now. We do not have to invent people from worlds in many galaxies away to have constructed these. We're very close ourselves. Why couldn't we have done it?
I think it's happened. I think people who think they see structures on the moon or on Mars, I think they're right. The Hoaglands and people like that.
Yes, I believe you're right. And it's interesting that the Russian Sputniks went. There was a Russian probe to Mars some years ago, and they looked down and they believed that they had seen a structure of a city, a circular city with streets going out like spokes of a wheel. And, of course, they were shouted down by the West, and I think perhaps the Russian scientists had seen something there.
I believe that there were nuclear wars on this planet in the past, don't you?
Oh, most certainly, yes.
I mean, there's a lot of evidence. You know, there's green glass in the deserts there. And what causes that?
Atomic energy is able to cause that.
So what's new for you next? Where do you go after the the weapon of the globalist fear? Is that the book out yet? I couldn't find it.
Oh, I see. No, it's only available on my website at the moment, George, but I hope we can get it out to a wider audience soon.
Okay, that's I was looking at it on the website, but I went on Amazon a week ago to try to pick it up, and it's not up there yet. We got to get you on that.
Thank you.
Get you going with that. Now, the speed of all of this, you are convinced then mankind, intelligent mankind, is how old?
I'm convinced that if the book of Genesis is correct, we've got to take it more seriously than we have been. And that there is no reason to believe that there's no scientific reason why the strata of the Earth that we see today in the geological column could not have all been laid down by catastrophe, mostly during that great disaster in the past, and that what we look at as taking millions or hundreds of millions of years was not necessarily so, because this strata shows us. I mean, we've got, for example, in my book, I've got a picture of a man in Newcastle coalfields in Australia standing beside a tree that penetrates 14 strata of coal. And by the geological theory, each one of those 14 would have taken millions of years to have been laid down. But here's one tree, undissolved, not rotted away, standing up, penetrating 14 layers of coal. Now, we call these objects polystrate, and they're not rare. They're all over the world. They show that the beds of rock were laid down rapidly before their contents had time to decay. So this gives us, from the Precambrian up to the most recent, a very short time span for laying down of strata. And if you go up to Mount St. Helens, where the eruption, what year was that?
Oh, geez. That was some time ago.
Yeah, about the 1980s or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Quite a while. There's strata there that has hundreds of the layers, just like our strata in the rocks around the world today. And all those were formed in just 2 days. A whole canyon, I think about 150 feet deep, was formed in 1 day. So catastrophe can cause these things to happen.
Our listeners are quick. May 18th, 1980. That's when the eruption started.
Okay, well, thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah, 1980, great. Now, coal doesn't take millions of years to form. Coal has been formed in the laboratory in just 28 days. Good, black, good grade coal.
Can we do the same thing with diamonds?
I believe so, yes. All of these things can be done artificially, and they can be done in a short period of time. So when we're saying it must take millions of years, it doesn't must take millions of years. It can happen very quickly, given a catastrophic laying down of the strata.
You know of the work of Michael Kremov, no doubt, right?
Yes, a wonderful work, and very similar to mine in many ways. He touches on an ancient technology, and I love his work on that.
Have you two ever worked together?
I've never met Michael.
Good guy.
Yes, I believe so.
You'd like him. And you're in Australia right now, right?
Actually, not too far away. We're in the little Isles of New Zealand.
And you have escaped the floods down there, Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, George. We have. In fact, we're getting a violently hot summer down here. It's beautiful, really, but El Nino is bringing New Zealand to the tropics in climate this summer.
It is ironic, though. Now. We're talking about these calamities. Australia's got a big one down there.
Well, I've got a colleague in Australia, and he's surrounded. He couldn't get out of his house for more than a week. And when he did get out, he couldn't get home for almost a fortnight.
This theory of the rock formation, do you think that's the smoking gun?
Yes, I think you've put that very beautifully. This is the smoking gun that can destroy the work of the globalist agenda. And also, it can destroy the evolution theory, which has brought about this nihilistic attitude, unfortunately.
At what point in your career did you think evolution was hogwash?
When I began to investigate for dead men's secrets, and suddenly all these out of place artifacts started no longer to make sense within the framework that we'd been taught. And it became obvious that a caveman had sophisticated clothing, for example, but we've got cave drawings that go back several thousand years, and these were contemporary with the post-flood civilizations. I think there's good evidence for this now because of the structure or the type of artwork that they had in the caves is very similar to that of the early Sumerians and Egyptians. The caveman artwork, and it shows people in pantsuits and with purses and hats and all sorts of things. This indicates that caveman he had a civilized beginning, and just like today, up here in New Zealand, we've got a man who went bush and became living in a cave. He was a school teacher before that, but he got a little bit sick of the rat race. Mm-hmm. So cave people had to take refuge when their cities were destroyed by nuclear holocaust or by some natural means, and they are not the remnants of evolution. They're rather the survivors of destruction of civilization.
How many forgotten secrets are out there, or hidden secrets?
In my book, I've listed just over 1,000, but that's just the tip of it. Tens of thousands. I went through tens of thousands to whittle it down to that. Speaking of tips, you said the Egyptians had power drills that worked 500 times faster than what we have. 500 times faster, and that's the verdict of experts who are involved in that industry. By looking at the boring, I guess? That's right, yeah. That is dramatic all by itself. Of everything you've investigated, Jonathan, everything, what one secret just blows your mind? That's a hard one. Well, I do think probably that... By the way, you sound like the angel in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. You do. You sound like Clarence. Here to rescue all of us. I always love talking with you. I think it's so much fun. But if there's one thing out there that you stumbled across, that you just shake your head, what is it? I think it's the underground tunnels that go for hundreds of miles, and many of the long distance of them shows that they've been cut with something like a laser beam, because there's no residue, no rubble on the outside or anywhere. It just looks like it's been cut and the rock's been melted. Well, maybe the old Jules Verne story of Journey to the Center of the Earth is real. Well, fiction is often very true to fact. Well, absolutely. You want to take some phone calls for the final hour? Yeah, that'd be great. We'll do that. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to open up the phone lines. We'll give you an opportunity to talk with Jonathan Gray about dead men's secrets and the weapons the globalists fear. You've heard what we've been talking about, so I'm sure my gosh, the phones are ringing already. So we'll be back in just a moment. If you need to email me, that's George at coast2coastam.com, and also go to our website. Those of you who are interested in spending pennies a day to become a Coast Insider, you can do all that by going to coasttocoastam.com as well. We'll be right back with your phone calls on Coast to Coast AM.